Christ isn't gonna condemn us or justify us from keeping the Passover. Now, when he's said about the New Testament, uh, this wine about the bread, unleavened bread and the wine, he said, "Do that in remembrance of me until I return."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we do that. That's part of the New Testament, the New Covenant.
Right. But where did Christ say that we don't keep Passover in the New Testament? Where did he say we do not keep that no more?
Well, I can't find anywhere where we Christ said we will be justified for not keeping Passover.
Well, in the Old Covenant, right? In the Old Testament, it said that we were supposed to keep Passover for for generation to generation, right? In the New Testament, there's nowhere documented in the New Testament where it says we were supposed to stop keeping that day.
Mm-hmm. I got you.
Okay, so we are supposed to still keep Passover till this day. Well, read First
Because
Corinthians
what what
5 and 6.
okay.
Okay, I'm gonna show you something, right? Because you say your church they don't keep Christmas, Thanksgiving. Okay, that's good. But there are feast days. There are days that the Lord commanded us that we are still supposed to keep to this day to honor Him, right? First Corinthians 5 and 6.
The book of First Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 6. Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump?
So this is Paul. He's speaking to the Israelites that were scattered in the church of Corinth. They were in Corinth, right? So he's letting them know that their glorying, right, was not good, and that their leaven, which was symbolic for sin, leavened the whole lump. There was sin in the body that they weren't checking, and Paul was letting them know any sin that goes unchecked is going to spread throughout the body, right? It's going to spread throughout the body. Go ahead.
Purge out therefore the old leaven.
So Paul was letting the church of Corinth, they have to get out the sin that they was dealing with. In the church of Corinth, they were dealing with fornication, things of that nature, right? So Paul was letting them know, listen, y'all got to purge out that sin within the body. Go ahead.
Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened.
The unleavened bread, right, that we take is symbolic for us without sin. Go ahead.
For even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us.
So it said Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Christ died to forgive forgiveness for the children of Israel. His blood was shed for the forgiveness of sin for the children of Israel. Go ahead.
Therefore, let us keep the feast.
What does it say?
Let us keep the feast.
What did it say in verse 7, the bottom? It said, for even Christ, what?
For even Christ, our Passover,
Uh-huh.
it is sacrificed for us.
Now, verse 8,
Therefore, let us keep the feast,
read.
not with old leaven,
Uh-huh.
neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
So guess what? In the New Testament, guess what? We were still commanded to keep the feast of Passover. It was never changed. Those feasts we were still supposed to keep. You understand, Mike?
Yes, that's now. If you read that one more time, this is what it's saying.
I just explained to you what it was saying.
Okay, well, I guess we will agree to disagree on that there.
So what's your understanding based off what we just read from First Corinthians 5 verses 6 to 8? What's your understanding on that?
All right, did you see where he said that Christ is our Passover?
Yes, we did. We read it.
Right. So if we have Christ,
Mhm.
he is our Passover.
Mhm. So let me ask you, Mike, at the end of verse 7, what is that punctuation mark after us?
Oh, my bad, my bad. Let me wait for my app to get back up.
Okay. I want you to tell me that punctuation mark that's after the word us in verse 7.
I was wondering First Corinthians 6.
First Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7. I want to know what punctuation mark you got in your Bible after the word us, the last word in that verse.
All right, we had 7, right?
Yep, verse 7. What's that last word that you see in that verse?
For okay, us.
Us. Okay, and what's the punctuation mark right after it?
Therefore,
What's the punctuation mark?
what you talking about after us?
Yeah, after us. What's that punctuation mark?
What you talking about semicolon?
It's a colon, right?
Right.
Right. So what does a colon do?
Oh, well, what? Tell me. Tell me.
Well, a colon is letting you know that the thought continues or it's going to expound on what was previously stated. What was
Uh huh.
stated is before it said, "For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us," colon, meaning the next statement is going to continue expounding on what was just said. Reader, read verse 8 again.
Verse 8. Therefore,
It said, therefore, Christ is our Passover now, because back then, during the feast, we had to offer up a sacrifice. Okay? But now in the New Testament, Christ took the place of the animal sacrifice. He was the lamb that was without spot or blemish. Because on the Passover, we had to sacrifice a lamb without spot or blemish. So Christ, he took the place of animal sacrifice, right? He was our sacrifice for the Passover. Go ahead.
therefore, let us keep the feast,
So Paul's letting us know Christ was our sacrifice, but we're still supposed to keep the feast. We're still supposed to keep the feast. He didn't say we don't keep the feast no more. He said we're still supposed to keep the feast. Read.
not with old leaven,
Not with the old mindset, not with the sin that was still in our spirits. Go ahead.
neither with the leaven of malice and
Uh
wickedness,
huh.
but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
So
There you
Mike.
go. Now, hold on, right there. Hold on. But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. What does
Mhm.
that mean?
That's we're supposed to purge out the sin, because that was the sins that the body was dealing with. They had malice, they had wickedness, right? They was dealing with fornication. There was different things that the church in Corinthians specifically and Israelites all over. Guess what? These were the spirits they had when they were celebrating the
There you
feast.
go. There
We
you
weren't
go.
supposed
That's what you just said.
when we were celebrating the
Spirits.
feast. When we were celebrating the
Spirits.
feast. So Paul was letting us know that we were supposed to keep the feast, but we were supposed to do it with sincerity, not with the old leaven, meaning the sin that we were still dealing with, because there was sin in the midst of the body of the church of Corinth. When you read the church of Corinth, they were dealing with fornication. So Paul was letting them know, listen, y'all got to get rid of the sin, because that's what leaven represents. It represents sin. He said, y'all got to check that and get that right, because during the feast days, that's supposed to be purged out from the body. And that wasn't what's going on during the time of when Paul was dealing with the church of Corinth at this time. So,
Right.
but
So
but
that's what
he
I'm
told them that you have to keep the Passover.
right. So that's what I'm saying. The Passover. How do you worship the most high if you're gonna keep the Passover?
Got it. We'll go to the law. Go to Leviticus.
Now, what let me ask you this. How does the Messiah say you worship the most high?
He said you worship in spirit and in truth.
There you go.
So what's the truth, Mike,
The
according to
truth
the Bible?
is the Father. The
Okay.
Spirit. The
Give me the
Spirit
truth.
is your heart.
Okay, watch this. Watch this. Watch this, Mike. Give me the truth, reader. Psalms 119.
Psalms chapter 119, verse 142. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth.
That what?
And thy law is the truth.
So the laws of God that is written throughout the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, that's the truth. We're supposed to worship God in spirit and truth, meaning we're supposed to keep the commandments of God, right? Without sinning. All right, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Now, give me Acts chapter 20 and verse 6, because Paul told us we were supposed to keep the commandments or keep the feast of Passover. Watch in Acts. This is after Christ. This is we read this after the death of Christ. Christ, he rose and he went ascended back into the heavens, and we read in the Corinthians that Paul said we're supposed to keep the feast. Now let's see what happened in Acts.
Acts chapter 20, verse 6,
Start at verse 4.
verse 4. And there accompanied him unto Asia. So Peter.
So this is Paul. He was making his travels because his job was to go and teach the Gentiles that they had to keep the commandments and the faith of Jesus Christ. And we no longer had an animal sacrifice. So this is what's going on in the book of Acts. That Paul was commissioned, when you read Acts chapter 9, to go into the Gentiles and be a light unto him. So now he's making his travels and teaching the Gentiles. Go ahead.
And there accompanied him into Asia. So Peter of
Mm-hmm.
Berea and of the Thessalonians, Aristarchus and Secundus,
Go ahead.
and Gaius of
Go,
Derbe, and Timotheus, and of Asia Tychus and Trophimus.
go ahead.
Verse 5. These going before tarry for us at Troas, and we sailed away from Philippi
Uh-huh.
after the days of unleavened bread.
The days of what?
The days of unleavened bread.
Mike, what are the days of unleavened bread? What is that referring to?
But in the old law?
No, right here. We're reading Acts. This is in the New Testament. After the death of Christ, died. 3 days later, he rose again and
Okay,
went
my
into
bad, my
heaven.
bad, my bad. Yeah, tell me.
Okay, go to Luke chapter 22 and verse 1. So Paul was traveling with the other disciples, the other Israelites, other believers of Christ, right? And it said they sailed away after the days of unleavened bread, meaning they was keeping the days of unleavened bread. So what's the days of unleavened bread? Luke 20:21.
Luke 22, verse 1.
Yep.
Now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh,
So the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, read,
which is called the Passover.
which is called the what?
The Passover.
So it was the Passover. They were keeping the feast of Passover. This is the New Testament after the death of Christ.